so the first thing, we have a physical server, and after that, we know that we started in 20 years before, we started the virtual servers. So virtual servers, what is a virtual server then? Now, I'll put this in a simple way, but you have to do a little bit of study also. This is not something new technology which I should, spend too much of time, but it's a pretty old technology actually. So, what is a virtual server? So, virtual server powered by hypervisor. Okay. So now you will say, what is hypervisor? So hypervisor, some of the list of hypervisor I must tell you here, which is one of the popular is VMware, VirtualBox from Oracle. From Microsoft, if you say, then it is Hyper-V. Okay, and many other solutions are also available, like Zen and many other stuff. These are the hypervisor. So this hypervisor manage the virtual machines. Manage virtual machines. Now, what is a virtual machine? Same. Virtual server is virtual machines are same. Okay. So how it works actually? So let's understand in this picture. MS Paint. Yeah. So what happens earlier? Let's understand the physical model, physical server model. So earlier, what used to happen? This is a hardware. Hardware means storage, CPU, RAM, and all this thing, whatever you want to call it, memory. On top of that, we install operating system. Now this is the operating system, we have it. Now operating system consists of kernel also, correct? No? Operating system has kernel. So that means operating system based on the kernel, Windows kernel and Linux kernel, some plus other utility, create an operating system. Now on operating system, what we do, you log in. Let's say user 1 logged in, user 2 logged in, user 3 logged in, and they run their own applications. Correct? No? All of you are agreeing with it? All of you? This is a physical server model.
Yes.
Okay, so now what has happened in the virtual server? Like this is the hardware, same hardware. Okay, and in the data center, when you run applications, so typically you run one user, one applications. So lots of hardware resources get wasted. Hardware resources get wasted. That means, let's say I'll put it in this very simple way. Understand this. Let's say you're running the physical server in data center. So your peak time and average time and peak hours where the maximum traffic and minimum traffic and here average traffic. So let's say I'll put it in a very simple way. Let's say your minimum requirement at the minimum CPU requirement, minimum RAM requirement at the minimum, the traffic which is at the minimum level, let's say 4 GB. And maximum when you need that traffic is higher than 16 GB. So will you set up the physical server with a 4 GB or 16 GB? Which one you will set it up? All of you?
16 GB.
16 GB, very simple common sense actually. We'll set up with a 16 GB. But you know what? Your average requirement is only 10 GB or maybe 6 GB. If you look at the data, because in data center you don't have only one server, right? You have hundreds of servers. So now if you see that here, let's say 6 GB. So your wastage is around 10 GB per day multiplied by hundreds of machines. So look at that, how much wastage of RAM you have. So like that you have a wastage in CPU also, storage also and all. So basically you are wasting lots of hardware. Now you can't say, hey, take this hardware, one of the machines physical server and use for development and testing. You can't say. You can't give it to some different teams also, because you know that, okay, you can't share that production environment just like that. So that is the kind of issues which we had. Lots of hardware wastage we had it in a physical server. Hardware means CPU, RAM, and storage. And to run the hardware, you need AC also, data center locations also, engineers also to manage that also. So then that is where that many vendors has come, like a VMware, Zen, Hyper-V, VirtualBox, and many more other. And they came and they said, hey, let's do one thing, because your ultimate goal is to create run applications, which is here. And for application, you require a user. I'm not complicating your learnings now, because in Docker I will complicate. So let's understand, this is your end goal, and for that this user is required, and this user to create and run operating system and kernel is required, and kernel is running on the hardware layer, right? So can we do one thing? Can we run multiple kernel, multiple operating system? So then can we run this one operating system, two operating system, and three operating system? So it's the same hardware, but you have a three operating system here, three kernel you have. So OS, and then here you have a user, and here you have applications. So can we do one thing like this? Can we run a similar same hardware but multiple virtual machines, virtual servers, virtual operating system we can run? So then it was a good idea, because let's say if you have a hardware and you have some more resources remaining, such as CPU, RAM, and hard disk, then you can create a more VM and give it to someone else. Correct? Like that, you can do that. So that is what has happened. So here, this is a one VM got created, virtual machines. There's one VM, two VM, all this thing you got created. Now the question is, who will manage this VM? Then many software has come on top of the hardware, and this software we call it this one. VMware has a multiple software for this actually. VirtualBox, Hyper-V, and Zen. Okay, so on top of hardware, you install the VM, and based on the VM, hypervisor, not hypervisor, and hypervisor have a multiple VM created, and each VM you have operating system, and inside that you can do whatever you want. So sharing the resources, sharing the hardware, and optimizing the utilizations can be done with a hypervisor. So this technology called virtualization, that sharing the same hardware for the many resources but creating isolated environment is called virtualization. Make sense, guys, all of you?
Rajesh, I have this query. Like, hypervisor is a software or a hardware itself?
No, hypervisor is a software always. So
Okay,
here,
and it sits on top of the hardware, right?
so that's a good question actually you ask. So let me draw the right pictures actually. So here what happens, there is a two kind of hypervisor nowadays in the market, you find it. Okay, so what kind of hypervisor? So let's say this is the hardware. This is the hardware. And there's one kind of hypervisor you find, which you install, that has a kernel inbuilt actually. Okay, kernel inbuilt. So that this kernel plus hypervisor, and top of that you create a number of VM, and use this, install the operating system and use it for whatever the purpose. This typically you run in the data center. Okay, this you run in the data center. But for us, that's not the case. So if you remember that, for us, it's like this. We have a hardware. For us means for your laptop. That's laptop, your hardware. On top of you have an operating system, and which has a kernel, and then top of that you install the hypervisor. And then you create a multiple VM, and then inside that you have operating system. Got it? So this is our laptop scenario. Make sense?
Okay.
Hey, Raj, what is kernel? What does it?
So kernel is your operating system. So operating system is made of the kernel resources. So I'll put it up in this way. First you have hardware. and then on top of that you install kernel. But kernel, where directly you cannot use it. So what we do, kernel plus system utility, you can say. System utility means for Linux it's bash, ls, cat, all these commands and all. Okay, networking commands, networking drivers, sound drivers, graphics, GUI, and all stuff like that. Okay, system utility, and then you use it for, and this you call it, this is kernel and system utility, you call it in simple way OS. Make sense?
So Raj, kernel is something which sits between your hardware layer and your software layer and kind of
Yes.
connects it. Okay.
Kernel is a software only, but because of kernel only, human can interact with hardware.
Perfect.
So it's a it's a program, it's a code actually. Let me see here. See, the kernel is a computer program, which basically helps you to interact with hardware and human. Okay. So this together we call it operating system. Okay, so now we understood at a high level what is a hypervisor. So which are the hypervisor we have? These are the hypervisor. So now the question is, how do we create a VMs? The question is, how do we create a VM? How do we create a VM? So guys, for that, if you want to create a VM in the laptop, okay, then you can use VirtualBox, the one which I'm teaching you. If you want to create a VM in a cloud, then you can use AWS or Azure or GC, Google Cloud. Many other clouds are there. If you want to create a VM in your or private cloud also, do you want to set up a private cloud? This is a public cloud. Public cloud means anyone can access public cloud. But if you want to set up a private cloud, like your organization wants to set up a private cloud, then you can use some of the software like Zen and hypervisor and also Hyper-V. Sorry, Hyper-V. This Hyper-V from the VMware itself. Okay. So this is up to you. Everywhere nowadays, from last 20 years, we are running application on a virtual machines after your laptop. Clear? So if you go to the AWS, also you create a virtual machines, or if you go to the your private cloud, also like VMware Hyper-V and all, a laptop also you can install see, there's a mistake actually. vSphere, not vSphere. There's a tool actually. VMware vSphere. Understood, guys, all of you? Hello?
Yes, Rajesh, I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the question is, okay, fine. How to install VirtualBox? See, installing the VirtualBox in Windows, I don't think so. You'll struggle for it. So VirtualBox download, okay, and go to this here. See here, and this is for Windows download. This is for Mac. This is for Linux. It's up to you. Solid is hardly we use it. So Windows, just go and download exe file. Now after the exe, click next, 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 and finish. That's all. Nothing else. So you can do that offline. Okay. This I have done it already. So I will go and open up. See, this is the Oracle VirtualBox. This is the Oracle VirtualBox here. Now you see, I have so many VMs actually for the training purpose. I have a different VMs and all. So these all are virtual machines, different virtual machines. So I installed this VirtualBox. That's all. Then you'll ask me how to download OS image. OS image means, when you say OS image means we'll have a kernel plus system utility, which I said. So where do we get all this stuff? Okay, I'm putting in a system utility, but kernel is a very important topic for understanding actually.
Thanks for watching. Want to study further? Join our training programs today.